Welcome to the Data-Driven Career Acceleration Starter Kit. I am Jason Todd Cohen. I'm going to be your guide and career analyst and mentor on your journey. Just to give you a little bit of an introduction to myself. So I would describe myself as a hybrid marketing and tech leader over my 24-year career. I've helped to create a lot of value for different companies that I had the opportunity to work for, as well as their clients. And in addition, I've also worked in startups. I've owned startups, and I was fortunate enough to have a couple of exits. And I've helped to support the hires of many people in some well-known organizations, either as a people manager or as part of a hiring committee. And in order to do that, I've had to build these top performing teams in these organizations. I've been able to get team members exceeding expectations or more ratings in performance management, and helping people to accelerate their careers and to avoid significant mistakes that we kind of make via trial and error. And we're able to do this. I've been able to help people to more than 2x their salary, and I've also applied these approaches to my career, and that has enabled me to significantly increase my salary and my frequency and promotion, get the kinds of accomplishments that enable that to happen, and also to feel more sense of purpose and less stress in my work, because I'm able to align a lot of the things that are important to me through a data-driven approach. And I'm very happy that I get the opportunity to do that with you today. So what I'm going to show you throughout this starter kit and through the rest of the programs are things that I've implemented with others, and they've had success, as well as things that I've implemented for myself and that I've had success with. So you might be wondering, like, before we even get to what a data-driven approach is, more of the why behind it and why you should consider doing it. So when we look at many things that we work on, we usually have to provide data and what our progress is. But why don't we do that in our careers? Why isn't that normally the approach? It seems like career growth, it takes this more like esoteric, inspirational approach, but doesn't really need to do that. And taking a data-driven approach allows us to create a concrete direction for ourselves instead of others, and giving them the power to do that whether they mean to or not. And it helps you to understand what you exactly need to do to follow that direction. It makes it very clear what needs to be done. It helps you to pick the right things that you need to work on to make sure you're getting to the points that you want to get to. And it allows you to ultimately emphasize to others what is important to them, and what is important to them is part of the data collection that we will do in terms of a data-driven career. And then additionally, if you have the data points, you're tracking against them, you're planning against them, you're delivering against them, you can now communicate against them, and you can articulate a clear value to yourself and to others. And it also gives you a basis of which to stand up for yourself, maybe in conversations, performance, promotion, other types of conversations in which perhaps a perception of you is being documented. But if you have the data points, you can push back on that and help to accelerate your career. So what is and what is not data? So hyperbole, things like the best, the worst, things that you can't concretely define and that are kind of just word salad, that's not a data-driven approach. Your opinion in most cases about yourself, again, tied kind of to hyperbole, like this was the best thing that ever happened in terms of this year in my career or for the entire team, that doesn't necessarily count. And you need data to actually prove that. And just like in other areas in the work that we do, data needs to be measurable. So you need to quantify it, you need to qualify it. That usually means there's some kind of absolute size or a delta and a change. And sometimes it could be relative to something else, a prior period or another project. And there can also be a scope, which qualitative data helps to define. So the seniority of a team, the type of team that you were working with, the type of customer, the level of customer, the geography of a customer. These are all qualitative points or dimensions that can help in aiding to the scope of the quantitative points or the results or the measurable things. And it helps to add context to the stories that we tell with data. So what does it mean to have a data-driven career? Kind of implied that through the why, but it's essentially taking quantifiable numbers, qualitative data, structured and unstructured data, relevant information to contextualize your story and to create a plan for yourself and to communicate out that plan and that progress so that people can understand it and it's not hyperbole. And this can occur across goals. It can occur as you're striving to achieve your goals and your progress, and also within your communications. Using a data-driven approach to your career and putting that into your communications can make what you're saying very precise and easy for people, especially what I will call career gatekeepers or people that have a heavy influence on your career, easy to understand the value that you're creating. It allows for comparison and quick comparisons for yourself and with others, allows for quick assessment, again, not hyperbole and concepts, and also a data-driven approach to your career. It's not only measurable, quantifiable, qualitative, directed towards something, is leveraged in different areas, allows for comparison and relativity and scope. It's also iterative. It gives us the opportunity to say, this is where we were, and if I change and do this again, this is the kind of measurable growth I can get, and it allows me to adjust what I'm doing throughout the process. So the big question becomes, all right, to take a data-driven approach to my career, to create clarity for myself and others, what kind of data should I collect and use? This is the big question. And we're going to cover that in just a moment. So what is the objective at the end of the day? When you go through the programs, you might hear me go back to this data point again and again and again. There is this organization called GH Smart. They wrote this best-selling book called The CEO Next Door, where I believe they interviewed like 18,000 CEOs and board members and asked what was like the top things that made a CEO or a leader successful in the minds of themselves and others. And what came back as the number one thing is the ability to consistently be successful. So that was the number one thing that was indicative of a leader that was successful in the eyes of the board, as well as other types of stakeholders. So our objective here, when we're leveraging a data-driven approach to accelerating our careers, is to consistently exceed expectations and to use data to define that, and to use data to plan, measure, activate, and communicate around the exceeding of expectations. And that's because expectations exist within an entire ecosystem of expectations. And please excuse my sloppy and crude drawing. I have probably arguably the world's most horrible handwriting. But what you see in this diagram is just a series of circles that define expectations of different groups. You have your own expectations when it comes to your career or to your work. So do your direct reports. So do cross-functional teams that you work with. So does your manager. So does your skip level manager. So does the business. So does the business unit. So does the customer. So does the partners. So does your market, your country. So does society, and so on. And all of these expectations are intertwined with one another. But however, expectations aren't always goals. Sometimes they are, sometimes they are not, but often expectations of the stories that sit in each of our heads that each of us always don't know. Sometimes we don't completely understand our own expectations, let alone the expectations of others. So it's important to understand that what you expect sits with an entire ecosystem of expectations. And we're going to leverage a data-driven career to accelerate your career. And some of the data points that we're going to collect and leverage are about the expectations that others might have. So how does this happen? How does a data-driven career start? What is that starter kit? Well, it's a 5-step process. And the first 2 steps are all about understanding your expectations and the expectations of what I call career gatekeepers, the people that have a great influence on your career. And they can be different types of stakeholders. And ultimately, we want to convert these gatekeepers into advocates for our career so that they're representing our brand either consciously or subconsciously in the various conversations and meetings and opportunities that they're present in that maybe we're not directly present in. So the key thing first is to understand what we expect from our careers, like what are the endpoints and the milestones, where are we currently and what's the honest assessment, and then understanding the expectations of the broader ecosystem of expectations and to document that, and then to align all of those things together to create a plan of how to move forward and accelerate that consistent exceeding expectations, that type of outcome through our plan, tracking against the expectations that we've discovered through our data collection and measuring against that. And while we're executing, and even before executing, we're planning and gathering data through execution and through completion, communicating the value that we are generating. So this might be a new concept to you. It might take a few moments to sink in, but as part of this program, I've also provided a workbook, Google Sheet that you can use that can serve as your career acceleration plan. And I will go through that document as well as we go through each of these exercises and show you how to fill that out so that you can then use that or adapt that to your career, to your job, et cetera, so that you can accelerate those career outcomes for yourself. So that concludes the program open for the starter kit. Feel free to go to the next step in the program where I will be kicking off the process and starting to help you collect the right data that you need in order to create a data-driven career. See you there.